Here today, we are down in the Red Frog over in the, what is this, floor 5. And what we're going to do today is we're going to take a tour. So right now, I'm going to introduce you to somebody that really interesting here. Come on, dude. All right. This is Robert. Robert, what do you do here?
I'm the brewmaster for the Carnival Vista currently. So like you said, we're located at Deck 5 midship on the beautiful Carnival Vista in the Red Frog Pub. This was the first of our breweries, but you're about to find out all of that stuff. Essentially what we're going to cover today on the tour is how we make beer, the raw materials involved, and the process in which we put those things together. Then we're going to talk a bit about like why in the world we ever put a brewery on a cruise ship and how we achieve that.
It's good.
I'm then going to tell you a little bit about Carnival and kind of the role this plays within the company. The entire time we're going to drink our beers, which is the most important part.
No doubt.
And then sign off.
All right. And you have been with Carnival for how long now?
About 5 years. It's just before the pandemic.
And when did you start getting into brewing? Or did you start off doing it?
Yeah, with Carnival, I've only ever brewed. I've been brewing about 10 years, but I got hired as a brewmaster for Carnival.
Well, that's awesome. That's awesome. Well, let's go ahead and we'll go ahead and get started on the tour. So that way, like you said, he's going to bring all that into it. It'll all stack up, and then we'll just go from there.
Cool.
So stay tuned.
Right on.
We interrupt this program to bring you an important announcement.
So, welcome to the Red Frog Pub. Obviously, I'm Rob, your brewmaster. Today, I don't know how many of you guys actually signed up in the app, and if you did, I don't know if you read what you signed up for. So this is what you're getting into. This tour is going to last somewhere between an hour, hour and a half. In that time frame, we're going to cover raw materials, how we make beer, the process, how we put those things together, why and how we put a brewery on a cruise ship. I'll tell you a bit about me, you can tell me a bit about you, and the most important thing is we're going to sit around and drink a bunch of beer. Is that okay with y'all?
Yes.
Very good. So I also want to let you know, just in case you didn't read, that the tour does come at a cost. It's $30 per person unless you're on Cheers, and then you get a 25% discount. Essentially though, what you're going to get for that is I'm going to give you pictures of beer, and when you run out of beer, you just ask me for more beer and you'll get more beer. Sound good?
Excellent.
I'm also going to give you guys some gifts at the end, and you get to stare at me for the next hour. All good? Cool. Everybody good? All minds free and clear? Yeah, cool. So we'll get started. First thing I want to talk about is raw materials. Well, first, let's talk. Let me tell you about me. I'm from a little town in North Florida called Keystone Heights. Little one-stop light redneck town. Nobody's ever heard of it. Basically, meth heads and trailer parks. So obviously, I didn't start making beer in Keystone Heights. About 12 years ago, I moved to Lakeland, Florida, which is where I started in beer. There's a large craft contract facility in Lakeland called Brew Hub. And the business model at Brew Hub is that they brew beer for other people. So imagine, if you will, what's your name? Say you open a brewery. You can no longer meet the public demand for the beer you've been producing. So now you have to farm out your production someplace like Brew Hub so that people get beer and you get paid. Does that make sense? Yep. Cool. So I then went to Yingling for about a year. That was a soul-sucking, terrible production job. So I left it and I went back to Brew Hub as a director of operations, and now I make beer on a cruise ship. Everybody cool? Yep. Awesome. Now let's get into raw materials. Is there any brewers here? Anybody dabble in beer at all? Okay. All right. Well, there are 4 raw materials that we use to make beer out of. Does anybody here know one of those raw materials? Wheat. Well, you could have said barley, you could have said wheat, you could have said rye, you could have said any cereal grain that has the potential for sugar we can use to make beer. What we do with that is basically we're creating color, aroma, and a little bit of other stuff like head retention, proteins, and so on and so forth. So with that, let's introduce the first beer that we're going to drink today. That first beer here is our Thirsty Frog Red. It gets the red color and some of those toasty notes and stuff that you're going to get from it from the barley that we're using to make it. So we're going to take that barley and we're going to add it to water. Now, the main reason I'm using barley is not color, it's not flavor, it's not aroma. Why is the main thing, what's the main reason I'm using barley? Anybody? Sort of. It feeds the yeast with sugar. Bingo. I need sugar because sugar creates alcohol through fermentation. And without alcohol, beer sucks. Yes or no? Yes. Would you be sitting here if I was serving you O'Doul's? No. I didn't think so. So it's very important that I create sugar, so therefore I can create alcohol. Make sense? The more sugar I create, the more alcohol is in the beer. Cool? All right, you guys can go ahead and drink your first beer. That would be better.
Interesting. Oh, that's good.
Cardan.
I like that.
Nectar of the gods.
It's actually, it's really good.
Cool, so let's move to the next raw material. Anybody have a guess maybe what that is?
Water.
Come on, somebody. I mean, it's kind of important to get liquid. You got to put water in it. Can we please agree on that?
Touch its head.
The unsung hero on almost all beverages water, because people just don't really think about it. But it's very important to the quality of that beverage because it makes up the majority of what's in that glass. Now here at Carnival Cruise Line, what we're doing is we're taking that water, we're desalinating it, reverse osmosis, we strip everything out of the water, and I add back minerals to create a water profile to fit the style of beer that I'm trying to make. Cool? We could go on about water for ages and ages and ages, but really what I want y'all to understand is that we take everything out and we only add what we want back into that water. This is not a foreign concept in beer making. Almost all breweries will strip their water because it's a whole lot easier for you to control your water content if you take everything out and only add what you want in. Does that make sense to you guys?
Yeah.
Cool, what's another ingredient? What? Yeast. Yeast is the most important ingredient in my opinion because they're the ones that actually create alcohol. Now yeast is actually a fungus, so you're drinking fungus juice right now. I know that's kind of weird, and if it makes you uncomfortable, you better buckle up because this thing's gonna get kind of crazy. The thing I want y'all to understand though is by fermenting the sugar, the yeast is creating alcohol and CO2 as a metabolic byproduct of creating their energy. Without the yeast, we would not have CO2 or alcohol in the beer. Cool? I can change the strain of yeast that I'm using to ferment the beer and therefore change the way that beer tastes. So have you ever had like a Hefeweizen? Like a Blue Moon? Have you ever had a lager? Like Bud Light? Those are fermented using two different yeast strains and you get two very different flavors based on the yeast strain. On that note, the second beer we're going to drink today is our Caribbean Wheat, which is this one. It is stylistically a wit beer, W-I-T, wit, that's German for wheat. We use wheat in the grist bill. We also add sweet orange peel and coriander, which makes it a wit beer, and we ferment it using WB 134.
Oh, 134.
Okay. I like that one better.
You and me both. You and me both, sister.
I'm like, well, it does have an orange citrusy.
And it has more of a sparkle.
I'm carrying around my cooler because, as you can tell, my first week back on the ship, you know, I just spent 2 months on vacation, and now I'm back in front talking to people all the time. And as everybody here can vouch for, I'm not the quietest guy in the room. So I kind of sound like Janis Joplin, so I gotta hydrate, you know what I'm saying? Everybody cool? Awesome. Last ingredient, what is it? I'll give you a hint. Bingo, bango. It's a green pine cone looking thing that we call hops. Now they occur in that format in nature, and we don't use that, we don't use them in that way in
You said hops.
in brewing, we use what's called pelletized hops because if we use whole cone hops, they're very inefficient. What I mean by inefficient is like they don't impart what I want as effectively. So what we do is we pelletize the hops. Therefore, it makes them more readily accessible in the brewing process. The thing I want y'all to understand is the hops are giving us bitterness and aroma. There's something in the hops called iso-alpha acid. The higher the level of alpha acid, the more bitterness that hop is going to contribute to the beer. There's also lots of different aromatic compounds and different styles of hops, and I can change the style of hop and change the way the beer tastes and smells. Cool?
Wow.
I know it's a lot. We're packing a lot into a brief, short period of time. But listen, folks, I also understand you didn't come here to go to beer school. You came here to be entertained and maybe learn a couple of things along the way. So I'm not going to bore you all the nitty-gritty of hops, unless you guys have questions. Cool. Let's move on. Now we've talked about water, hops, malt, and yeast. Those four ingredients are the definition of beer. In Germany, that's called the Reinheitsgebot. It says that Germans can only make beer using water, hops, malt, and yeast. Have you ever hung out with any Germans? Are they flexible people? No, by God, they mean that. But Americans do what Americans do best. We got our hands on beer, and we said, Katie, bar the door, if I want to put blueberries in my beer, by God, I will. So what I'm telling you, though, is here on the ship, I'm only using water, hops, malt, and yeast in my brewing process. That's not because I think I'm cool. It's because on a ship, it's already hard enough for me to acquire and appropriately store those ingredients without figuring out where in the world I'm going to put 300 gallons of blueberry puree.
Yeah.
Cool?
Yes.
Questions, comments, concerns?
No blueberry.
Huh?
No blueberry.
Yeah, no, I don't know what I'm doing.
I don't either.
All right. So really quick, let's talk a little about the process. So really, I'm gonna kind of make this a little bit shorter because I don't want to keep you too long. But process-wise, you guys ever make coffee? The concept of making beer is the same as making coffee. When you make coffee, you have a coffee bean. You grind up the coffee bean. You add hot water. You use the temperature of the water to extract the color, the aroma, the flavor. Then you separate the grounds because you don't like chewing on your coffee, do you? We don't like chewing on our beer. So we separate the malt out and we collect only the sugar water. You know what that sugar water is called? Not yet, or almost. Starts with a W. If you kiss a frog, you'll get one.
Work.
Very good. So we call it work. That work is just sugar water. I then add the hops to the sugar water in the boil. Now there's two reasons I'm boiling the beer. One is to extract the bitterness and the aroma from the hops. The longer I boil the hop, the more bitterness I'm going to extract from the hop. You ever heard of Dogfish Head 60-minute IPA? Yes. You ever heard of 90-minute IPA? 120-minute IPA. They don't change the recipe of the beer. They just boil it for 60, 90, or 120 minutes, and it gets more bitter the longer you boil it because you're isomerizing more of those alpha acids. Also, the alcohol goes up the longer you boil it because you're boiling away water in the form of steam. You condense the sugar solution, therefore you get more alcohol in the end. It's not rocket science, it's regular science. Everybody cool?
Yes.
What's the most important reason I'm boiling this beer? Nope. I need to sterilize it. Because I don't know what kind of microbes might be in my boil kettle or in the pipes or on the hops or on the grain. So unless I kill everything by boiling it, I don't know what's going to go to the fermenter to ferment the beer, and that's very important to the quality of that beer. Making sense? Then the fourth and final part of brewing is called the whirlpool, and the whirlpool we just spin it around, and we're only spinning it around to get rid of all the hops that we just added in because I don't want that solid stuff in the beer. All right, ladies and gentlemen, this is our brew house. Now, we call it the brew house because typically it's in a separate house. That's because we call it what side?
Cold side.
Hot side?
Hot side.
I don't want hot stuff inside my house back in history, right? So we put it in a separate house, we call it the brew house. We still just keep calling it the brew house because we're lazy and we don't like to change what we call stuff. Now, there's a couple of very unique things about this particular brew house other than the fact that it's located on a cruise ship. There's one thing that you can look at and see that it is very unique. What is it? It's made out of glass. Bingo. There's only about 7 in the world that are made out of glass. These are custom made for us by a company in Munich, Germany called Albrecht Brewtechnik. And listen to me, there is no good reason for this to be made out of glass. Almost every other brewery is made out of stainless steel. The stainless steel is much more cost effective than this very thick tempered glass that's topped with copper. But this is really cool.
And prettier.
Carnival likes cool stuff. So we bought a cool brewery to put on our cool cruise ship for no other reason than the fact that it's cool. Makes sense?
Makes sense.
Awesome. The other thing that makes this very unique is how many vessels do you see right here?
2.
Okay, 2. How many processes did we talk about over there?
2.
A lot, right? 4 in brewing. So we took those 4 processes and we combined them in these 2 vessels. That's because I don't have a bunch of space on this ship to put a bunch of stuff. So I had to consolidate as much as I could. This is a mash boil. So I add the grain to the water over here. We do the mashing. I then put that grain and water mixture, which we call mash, into this. Come close. If you look in the bottom there, that has a flat stainless steel bottom. We call that a false bottom. You can think of that like the filter paper in your coffee maker. That's going to keep all the solid grain over here, while only the liquid wort comes back over here. This now becomes the boil kettle. I'm going to boil it. I'm going to add the hops. I'm going to sterilize it. Everybody's happy. Cool? Now here's something important. When you boil, you produce what?
Steam.
Steam. If you don't ventilate steam, what happens?
It blows.
Kaboom! Do I like blowing up the ship?
No.
No, so I need to ventilate my steam. Every other brewery in the entire world ventilates their steam up. They have stacks. Every brewery has stacks. This one has stacks. Do you think those do anything? Nope. We thought our brewery would look pretty stupid if we didn't put stacks on it. But this is the active ventilation system. It's still going up through the stack on the top, but I can't ventilate it naturally the way everybody else does. It's because what deck are we on, folks?
Yeah. Deck 5.
What deck's there? What's on deck 5? I can't ventilate my steam through your room. It's not a good idea. So we have to take a different route, and so we force ventilate it. Make sense? I know, complicated.
No.
The next vessel then becomes the whirlpool. I put that liquid back in here. We spin it around, around, around. This is where I'm going to add some other aroma hops, maybe sweet orange peel, coriander, that kind of stuff. The reason you don't want to add that stuff to the boil is because in the boil it's so hot you're going to boil away all those delicate aromas and flavors. While here it's still hot enough where you steep it in, but it's not so hot that you're boiling it off. Cool? Now we're going to go to the fermentation hall. I got a couple of very important announcements, so please pay attention. This is a drinking tour, yes or no?
Yes.
You've probably been drinking all day, you're on vacation. You're also on a moving ship. You're also carrying beer around, and you're going into an active, actual brewery where we actually make beer. The likelihood that there's liquid on the floor is very high. Liquid on the floor, moving ship, drinking people. I don't like close-headedness. So please mind your step, just be careful, okay? Keep in mind that this is actually a real brewery, okay?
And no licking the floors.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right, let's do it.
You gotta say hi.
Got it.
Ladies and gents, really quick, I want to introduce you guys to our brewery assistant. She's the one that's bringing you all your beer. I just want you to know who that is. So this is Gab. She's our brewery assistant here on the Vista. Quite literally, I could not do this job without her. She not only helps me do the tours, bringing the beers out and stuff, but she also helps us catch the grain, mill the grain, and all that kind of jazz. So if you see her around the ship, please give recognition is due. Thank you.
Exactly.
Now get out of here and go do something. All right, y'all ready to get started? Cool. So guys, the next beer that we're going to drink is our IPA. Now this happens to be my favorite beer that we make on the ship. Not only because I like IPAs, but it's also the highest ABV that we make on the ship. At least it's the highest ABV beer that's always on the menu, on the printed menu. It's at like 6% ABV. It's got a really like grapefruity, citrusy thing going on. And that's kind of indicative of the style. It's also a little bit like piney, resiny. You guys can go ahead and give that a shot now. Listen, but one thing I will warn you of, IPAs tend to be what we call polarizing. It's either you like them or you don't.
Oh.
And
Dallas Cowboys.
I just want to let you know, bingo. I can't say that, you can. But I want to let you guys know, if you don't like it, You're not angering the beer gods. You're not gonna offend me. There's plenty of people that do like it. Just know that people have different tastes, and it's perfectly fine. The reason I have a job is because we don't all like the same thing. If you guys all like the same thing, I'd still be crying my eyes out at Yingling every day. So don't worry if IPA is not your jam. We'll get you into something. Cool? Cool. Drink.
Which one?
Oh, sorry. I gotta take this one.
Like which one?
That-
I don't know a lot about beers, so.
Take your pick.
It's a 50-50 chance you're gonna get it right.
Yeah, not my favorite.
Aha! That ain't my first rodeo.
Not my favorite. I guess I'm into more darker.
80% of all craft beer sold in America is IPA. So technically, if you don't like IPA, you're wrong.
Okay, and who is this guy over here?
That's Don Johnson. Don he is the brewer that I'm taking over from. Actually, Don is our newest addition to the Carnival brewing team. He came to us from a beta. He was, for a long time, ran their like R&D. Some places call it like a pilot program. Essentially, if you've had a new Abita beer, it probably went through his program, and he probably wrote the majority of that recipe. We stole him because he's awesome.
Excellent.
And you can tell Robert is a lot more with a camera than Don is. He's like, hey.
All right, guys, like I said, just remember that this is an actual brewery. When we go in this room, please mind your step, but we're gonna go in here and look at some of our other stuff. The other thing I wanna make sure you're aware of is I don't want you to be nervous. All of these tanks are sealed. You're not going to hurt anything if you bump up against the tank. If it comes between you falling over and brushing against the tank, I would much rather you just brush the tank because I make sure that all of this stuff is signed, sealed, and delivered. You cool? Cool. All right, bless the name of God. Let's go.
Let's go.
Also, watch these drains. They're uncovered right now.
Yeah, y'all watch your high heels. Yeah, don't twist your ankle. That's what he did.
All right, everybody in? Sign, seal, delivered. Turkey.
She's back. She's serving beer in the beer with the beer.
All right, guys. So I'm sure somebody in here, and usually it's the female in the group, you can tell now why we call this cold side or the cellar. It's not though that we air condition this room any more or less than any other part of the ship. It's just the thermal mass of all this cold stuff that's in here. Each one of these tanks are 800 liters in capacity, and so there's 8 tanks, 1,600 liters or 16,000 liters of beer that's at serving temperature, just above freezing. And that thermal mass just keeps this room much colder than everywhere else. Now we call this room the cellar because historically speaking it would be in the cellar. That's because temperature regulation during fermentation is of paramount importance. The only way they had to regulate temperature back in the day was to put it in the cellar where it was cold, and therefore they called it the cellar because it was in the cellar. Remember earlier I told you we're lazy and we don't like to change what we call stuff, so we just keep calling it the cellar. Are you cool?
Yeah.
Cool. Now obviously I'm not using the earth to insulate it anymore. What I'm using are these tanks. These things behind me and in front of you are what we refer to as conical fermenters. We call them conicals because they have cones. And we call them fermenters because inside we are
Fermenting.
very astute. So these are basically like giant, really expensive Yeti cups. They're double jacketed stainless steel tanks. And instead of air being the insulator like in a Yeti cup, this insulator that's running inside this jacket space is what's called propylene glycol. Now this propylene glycol is the same glycol that's cooling down our engines and driving us forward. So it's coming in this room way too cold for beer at like negative 30 degrees Celsius. So we circulate it back on itself as it exits. We warm it up a little bit. That way we don't make ice box and freeze all of our beer. Now the reason I'm regulating this temperature is because the yeast inside are going to start eating the sugar that I created outside.
All right.
That makes sense?
Yeah.
Now, just like you all, when the yeast start to eat, they get excited. Do you get excited when you go to Lido and feed your face?
Oh yeah.
Cool. Have you, at some point in this cruise, have you gotten too excited up there? You got a little like tum-tum ache, got the meat sweats, you know, made yourself upset? These guys will do the same thing. If I just let them just go, just like, they'll piss themselves off. And when they get mad, they create what's called off flavors. We call them off flavors because they're, do I like off flavors?
Oh,
No. So I need to regulate their temperature. So basically I'm controlling the action of the yeast by regulating their temperature. Think of it kind of like you ever had a little brother and they do like the little thing and they go swing, 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 swing. I'm essentially just pushing, keeping those guys at bay so that they don't hurt themselves. That makes sense to y'all?
Yeah.
Cool. Once fermentation is done, those guys are less active because they're not eating. What I need to do is put them to sleep, because if they stop eating, they start to die. And when they die, they produce off flavors. All living organisms, when they die, produce off flavors. If you don't believe me, go smell some roadkill. Everything when it dies produces off stuff. So I put the yeast to sleep so they don't have to eat. That's why they're just above freezing. Also, by dropping the temperature, it forces all of those yeast down to the bottom of the cone. That's the reason for the geometry of that cone, is then I can use that to re-harvest the yeast into another tank or send them down the drain if I see fit. I do like to re-harvest my yeast because yeast get better at doing beer the longer that they do beer. The concept here is, you have kids? Were your kids good at being human beings when they were infants? Take a baby, put it in the woods, leave it there. Is it going to live? No. Geese are the same way. They don't really know what to do yet. But the longer they do it, they kind of get better, right? So maybe now they're in their mid-30s, they're doing brewery tours on a cruise ship, they kind of got their shit together, and eventually they start doing weird old people stuff, and we send them out to pasture and say, thanks for your service, Grandpa. You know what I'm saying? Now for me, that's around 10 generations, because I don't want to wait until the yeast start doing weird stuff until I send them down the drain. That's because I don't want you to say, like, this beer tastes like crap before. I want to catch it. You never want to be behind the 8 ball.
Right.
Cool? Then I take that beer that's now fermented, alcohol's produced, everybody's happy, all the yeast is out, and I put them in these tanks. These are what we refer to as bright beer tanks. Bright beer is the industry term for carbonated, fermented, ready for service beer. These tanks are hooked directly to those taps outside. Every time you get a beer here at the Pig, or sorry, the other shit is the Pig and Egg, at the Red Frog, you're getting a beer directly from one of these tanks. Probably the freshest beer you're ever going to get a chance to drink.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Got any questions?
Yes.
Yes.
Do you have a similar beer that tastes like Miller Lite, Bud Light?
Yeah,
like
the lager.
the lager.
Beach lager.
Okay.
Now, one last thing I'll add, because you talk about lagers. Lagers are light in color, yes or no?
Yes.
Yes.
And they're clear, yes or no?
Ish.
How do I achieve clarity? Because I don't have a filter. Here, we're achieving clarity only with time and temperature. Think sweet tea. You ever been to California, you order sweet tea, they bring you a bag of sugar, it never dissolves in solution because it's too cold. Same thing here. When I drop the temperature, all the solids are forced down to the bottom, but that takes a long time. That's why I only have one lager on my menu, because I don't have time for all that BS.
Okay.
Everybody cool?
Yeah.
Let's go outside and drink our last beer, which is gonna be the Java Stout. It's one of the fan favorites because it's, well, flashing delicious. Cool. So guys, while you guys are drinking our Java Stout, which is obviously this beer, it's the last one there, and if you don't know anything about beer, stouts and porters are always going to be dark in color. So that is the Java Stout. It is probably my second favorite beer on the ship. It's delightful, and it's also the one that surprises ladies. Ladies generally see dark beer and they say, that's not my jam. But it's a little sweeter, it's got a coffee-esque thing, some chocolate, and ladies are like, oh my god, maybe I do like this beer. Watch out, because they're sweeter, they're higher in calories.
That is delicious.
Yes, ma'am. You run.
Delicious. I'm like, oh my gosh.
All right, so while you guys are drinking that beer, let me tell you a little bit about why Carnival got involved making beer. So, how many of you guys been cruising Carnival for a hot minute?
Oh yes.
All right, you guys here about 10 years ago? No matter where you went on the ship, all the drinks were the same. Drink menus didn't change, right?
Right.
About 10 years ago, we decided to change that because we thought maybe our guests wanted some variety in the drink menu. So when you're at steakhouse, you get fancy steakhouse cocktails. And we're by the pool, you get fun and fruity cocktails. And when you're in the Red Frog, you get rum cocktails. That makes sense? We're basically matching the vibe of the restaurant to the drink menu, and I think we can all agree that makes a lot of sense. Well, the leadership that was involved in doing that also really liked beer. And so that guy was like, hey, can we put a brewery on the ship too? And Carnival said, sure. So in 2016, we built this ship, the Carnival Vista. This was the first ship with a brewery on board in the North American fleet of commercial cruise lines. This was the first time it's ever been done. This pub produces 4 mainstay beers, which would be the Java Stout, the Port Hoppin' IPA, the Thirsty Frog Red, and that Caribbean Wheat. We also have seasonal taps, which is dealer's choice. Whatever I feel like making, I make. Carnival does a really good job giving us creative liberty. Whatever I feel like doing, I'm allowed to do. When Carnival figured out that this concept, the brewery concept, worked out well, they said, hey, why don't we keep putting breweries on ships? So in 2018, we built the Carnival Horizon. Horizon, instead of doing the Red Frog Pub, we did the Guy's Pig and Acre Smokehouse Brew House. It's a barbecue restaurant. We also have different beer offerings. We have the Toasted Amber Ale, the West Coast IPA, the Farmhouse Ale, and the Smoked Porter, which pairs very well with the smoked barbecue on the Smoked Barbecue restaurant. You picking up what I'm putting down? Hey, buddy. Cool. So now we got 2 ships: Carnival Vista, Carnival Horizon. They said let's just keep doing it. But then remember that thing that happened?
Yeah.
Little pandemic? Yeah. So at that point we had 3 ships and we were building a 4th.
That was 3 ships.
I will stab you in the neck.
They did it on purpose. Yeah, look at that look. Look at the look. Look at the look. Yeah, you. Yeah, you.
I didn't hear what you said. So we had 3 ships, 1 being built with breweries on board. And corporation said, man, maybe the entire fleet of ships, all of our guests would enjoy our beer. But obviously, do you think I can make enough beer to feed the entire fleet of ships here?
Yeah.
No. So they got in touch with a large craft contract facility in Lakeland, Florida called Brew Hub. Remember where I used to work?
Brew Hub.
That's how I got here, sweet cheeks. When I was working for Brew Hub, I was making Carnival beer. I just wasn't working for Carnival. The guy, our VP, called me. His name was Eddie Allen. He said, Rob, would you ever consider making beer on a cruise ship? I said, well, how much you gonna pay me? Hello. So that's how I got this gig. All of the canned beer that you guys get, if you look at the can, it'll say brewed by Carnival Cruise Lines in Lakeland, Florida. We don't can any of the beer here. I told you, all the beer on draft is served directly out of these tanks. That excess volume is produced in Lakeland, Florida by our partners. That makes sense to you guys? Yeah. Now we have 6 ships and breweries on board. That would be this one, the Vista, the Horizon, the Panorama, the Mardi Gras, the Celebration, and soon to come to Galveston is the Jubilee, and very likely what will be on Jubilee? That guy.
Oh my God! We
Good old
will
bird.
see you in March.
We'll be there.
Do you have any other questions, guys? All right, cool. So just to wrap this thing up, like I said in the beginning, I got 3 presents for y'all. 2 of the presents are really pretty cool. One of the presents kind of sucks, but I'm going to give you all 3 anyway. So for your first present, what I have for you is this wonderful, lovely, one of a kind. You can only get it right here, right now on this ship. Is a piece of paper. It's actually a coupon for another pint of beer. Whichever one of these beers was your favorite, you can submit it to one of these bartenders and they'll give you another pint at no charge to you other than what you've already paid. It also doesn't come off your drink package, so you're welcome. Sweet. Your second present is your receipt. I need you to sign it. Sorry, there's one that sucks. My bad. The third one is going to be a souvenir glass. This souvenir glass, it has all 3 of our logos on it. The Carnival Brewing logo, the Thirsty Frog logo, and the Pig and Anchor logo. If you guys are untapped people, please register these beers under Carnival Cruise, not under the specific beer names, because that's where it gets confused. Cool?
Yes.
One piece of advice I would like to give you though on these souvenir glasses. You guys are all traveling, right?
Yes.
Yes, sir. I know that because you're not wearing one of these. If you put those glasses together like this in your luggage so they travel nicely, they're either going to get stuck and crack in your hand or they're going to get cracked in transit. Please just put like a pair of breeches around one side and a bra around the other, and then
Or
wrap it
socks.
up before you put it inside.
Yeah. You always use your socks.
Also, I just like to let you guys know, I did wash these glasses at some point during the course of human history, but what's happened to it since then until now, I don't know. I told you guys a little about microbiology, and if you guys get a tum-tum ache, I don't want it to be my problem. So if I were you, I'd sterilize your glasses before use. Cool?
Yes.
Jesus, love you, see you around.
For more awesome content, like and subscribe now.